getting ready, preparing for live stream. Almost there.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to 3 Shots of Espresso, our weekly podcast focusing on a range of topics grounded within the Islamic framework, speaking about Islam, life, and everything in between. Tonight, we will be focusing on the topic of active citizenship. We have with us tonight on the panel a very important guest, a Ph.D. candidate at the University of Johannesburg. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to 3 Shots of Espresso. Tonight we will be speaking about active citizenship. We have with us on the panel tonight a very important guest, a PhD candidate from the University of Johannesburg, Sandile Ibrahim Moloi, who is currently pursuing his PhD at the University of Johannesburg. His research interest includes political Islam, Pan-Africanism, the African Union, and peace and security in the Middle East and Africa. Sandile, welcome to our podcast, and we're very excited to have you tonight to discuss active citizenship.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much, Brother Anwar, for having me, and thanks to everyone, and assalamu alaikum to your guest and all, to all the viewers at home.
MashaAllah. Good to be with you, Brother Sandile, and also good to be with you, Brother Anwar, MashaAllah. I'm looking forward to this evening's discussion. And yeah, it's my first time on the podcast with our guest. Previously, you had Monana Zakaria and a guest. So yeah, looking forward to the dynamic and also to the, I think a key discussion as we're coming up to the local government elections, probably among some of the stuff we will touch on today, I'm sure.
Definitely. I mean, tonight's podcast is based on based on the back of the upcoming municipal elections. Inshallah, on Monday, we'll be voting for our local ward councillors. This obviously is a very important feature within the South African democracy. The reason why we chose to discuss active citizenship is simply because active citizenship is really not just about going to the vote, to the voting booth and casting a vote. That's part and parcel of our duties and responsibilities as citizens within this democracy that we are living in. But there are much more important things that we can and should be doing between elections, before elections, and definitely after elections. But really, this is a discussion that it's quite broad, and let's just dive straight into it, inshallah. When we say active citizenship, oftentimes what comes to mind is basically citizens taking charge of their country, of their democracy. And I believe it's one of the things that strengthens our democracy, strengthens our institutions that allow our country to function. So these are the things such as being part of your school governance body, volunteering as part of your local CPF community patrolling forum. And there's a whole host of other activities and programs that people within our country should be getting involved in to ensure that our country continues to function, and we as citizens, our expectations from government are met. How do you guys feel about this?
Yeah, thank you so much, Brother Anwar, for that exciting introduction. I concur with you on what you've just mentioned. Actually, the concept itself of active citizenship, it's not a concept that has been used differently in different contexts, of course, but it's also a contested concept in a sense that we don't have a single definition of it. It's like democracy. Democracy is defined in many ways. For me, the timing of the topic is so essential, of course, for 2 reasons. One, it's because of the elections, but also it's because of the times in which we are living in. I think we all agree with me when we say that we are living in very challenging times where our democracy is under threat and it's under attack, and it's tested to the full of its strength to check whether how strong our democracy can withstand. And one of the things that I think we should appreciate more about our democracy being tested is because, one, we tend to say our democracy is the best democracy in the world. So when challenges are put to us as a country and as citizens, that's a time now, that's a real time that we can really assess whether our democracy is strong in paper or in theory and practice as well. So for me, this topic, Sheikh Anwar, it reminds me of the lecture that you delivered in 2014 when in Al Furqan, when you spoke of this same topic when we edging towards the elections at the time. And you also mentioned the very same thing to say, you know what, it's about time that we as young people, in fact, that time you're urging us even to go and register to vote under speech. So I think for me, active citizenship would mean, like we've said, so it's like, like I've said, I concur with you. So it also means it's a top-down kind of thing, participation, and also from bottom up. So it's not only, it's a vertical and a horizontal relationship where we interact with the government, but also we interact as community members. So yeah, I think, yeah, that's what I can say for now. And I think I will also give Brother Mohammed a chance to also say a few words.
Yeah, I think, Sandile, the whole vertical sort of sphere, for me, I feel that part of the discussion, of course, is a lot about how we can get involved at that level. It's the part where you're getting, involved with government, where it really becomes more of a challenge in understanding, is my vote going to count? Is my active citizenry in trying to lobby our local municipal councillors and so forth, does that really help? And I think we can unpack some of that later on this evening, and particularly with your areas of interest. I think you can shed some light on that. But for me, talk a bit about how do we get involved at a community level. I think this is, of course, part and parcel of playing the role of government also in our community. So when Anwar talks about a CPF, that's really an institution that's trying to play the police in your community. Yes, I understand that in functioning societies, in normal societies, and that's probably one of the things we can also talk about, is this a democracy trying to thrive in an abnormal circumstance with high goals? We have a great democracy, a great constitution, at least, but we have abnormal circumstances. Can it really work in that way? So I'm just saying, in abnormal circumstances like we find ourselves in, where crime is rife, where issues and challenges are, rife, private institutions thrive, private schools, private hospitals, private security companies, private universities, all of these things thrive because the role of government has been ceded to these private institutions. Government cannot run and function and cannot manage these institutions. So yes, we get involved, but at the same time, it bothers me that we get involved and we would talk about being active citizens, but really a lot of these institutions that we get involved in, I'm positing as part of the discussion, is in fact should have been the role of government. So I think that must not be misunderstood. We are trying to do stuff that at least the man on the ground is trying to play a double role. One, being an active citizen, and being part of the CPF and patrolling his streets and contributing to in our community, we contributed to the potholes, and I was driving past just yesterday from Madrasa, thinking to myself that these potholes, the community themselves fixed it, right? Getting their own, what's that word? The black asphalt, I think something like that. I can't remember what they call that, sort of a chemical and mixture, and they fixed the potholes, and that potholes has lasted longer than what it is when the government fixed it. It's been like 6-7 months now, So I'm just saying, part of the discussion is, yes, we get involved, active citizenry, and we can talk a bit about that, but I also do feel sometimes conflicted as an individual in my own mind, playing this role when in fact the government should be doing some of that.
Well, Mohammed, Ismail, you need to be fair, right? I mean, the ones that you fixed, when you fixed the potholes, you did it with the intention of doing it in once and for all, so you can continuously drive on your road. Government has this idea of constantly creating jobs. So the pothole gets fixed, but it must also be unfixed so it can get fixed again. That means more jobs, right?
Yeah.
But I hear you 100%, right? Both of you. I do feel that when we look at South Africa as a country, we are a very unique country. Our constitution, I believe, is definitely one of the most progressive, if not the most progressive constitution currently available anywhere on the planet, right? Also, our Bill of Rights is, it's quite substantial, right? But we also have a significant history as South Africans of being very, very vocal and being very, very active. We know the challenges that we've been facing basically post-apartheid, or rather in the new apartheid, as Dr. Sizwe Mpofu-Walsh schooled us about, right? And yes, private institutions are definitely thriving, right? And even those of us, that want to contribute towards the country, we always do ask ourselves, while we're working towards fixing up our institutions, we ourselves, many of us, are reliant on private institutions, right? So you might have an activist, a community member who's really dedicated towards his community, maybe campaigning for something about schools, better healthcare, better safety and security. But at the end of the day, their own home got a private security company that provides them with security. Their children may be in a private school, and so far as healthcare is concerned, they have medical aid or let's say a hospital plan that should they fall ill or something of the sort happens to them, they would go to a private hospital because they know the state of government hospitals, even though they're working towards making it better. This is the country that we've inherited. The conditions in the current country that we've inherited. So, since there's no one fixed definition about active citizenship, the South African experience is going to be quite different, compared to other parts of the world where, let's say, certain civil institutions or public institutions rather are quite effective, quite efficient, and they weren't designed in a way that it excluded the majority. South Africa, we're still working off basically organizational and infrastructural systems that were designed to service a minority, the former white minority, and basically at the expense of a largely black majority. Now, essentially, the artificial racial hierarchy of apartheid has crumbled, and we're all standing on a level playing field, and we all have to be serviced by basically one system. But that system is broken because it's simply understrained, it's underfunded, it's mismanaged, there is corruption, and South Africans, we have to contend with that. So I understand the situation is quite difficult, but if we don't actually change it now, understand our own dynamic, I don't think we'll ever get it right for the future.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I concur with you, Brother Anwar, as well as Brother Mohammed, in a sense of the privatization of the responsibilities, where we now have to, even over and above paying tax, you still have to pay for the services, privately pay for the services, which in any normal society you would get them for free. So it's also one of those things that I think would be able to filter into our discussion today. But for me, one thing that we have to also take into cognizance is the fact that the historical history, the history of the country informs most of our policies, as well as, when you say our policies, I'm referring to government, that most of the government policies and all of that. But also, we have a challenge in a sense that we expect government to do a lot. Active citizenship also means you expect government to do something for you, but you also have to hold them accountable. So I think active citizenship in this case would also mean holding government accountable. So for you to ask and for you to know the candidates in your in your community who are running for elections now, who want to be elected as ward councillors. It's part and parcel of being an active citizen. And also for you to be able to engage with them in the debates or spaces at forums where they engage in debates about what policies and what they will be doing for the communities. For you to participate in that is also part and parcel of being an active citizen. And also, like I've said, holding government accountable, but you cannot hold government accountable if you do not know and understand who's your own leader in the township to begin with. So for you to the stepping stone, it's you knowing who represents you in your jurisdiction, right? And for you to be involved in those things, and to be involved, to be a recognizable member of the community. You know, people should be able to know that, you know what, we have so and so, we have Brother Anwar, we have Brother Mohammed, who whenever there's a community meeting, they will be there, whether we are discussing things that are of interest to them or not. To me, that's what this thing, being an active citizen, it means. So there's a number of issues that we can discuss, and hopefully, inshallah, with time, we'll be able to discuss it, and also to frame it within and I'm glad Sheikh Anwar is here. We can also frame it within an Islamic perspective to accommodate Muslim audience as well as those who are non-Muslim as well, as a form of dawah. So in a sense, in Islam, we know that the Prophet ﷺ said Iman has several branches, and the least of those branches is just removing an obstacle on the street. So that alone teaches us as Muslims to say, you know what, for you don't have to wait and say, no, government has to employ people to clean the roads, or the government has to employ people to fix. For you, when you see something wrong in your community, if you are able to change it immediately, then let it be. But like Brother Mohammed said, that it's so taxing that you have to constantly do things that government in any normal society is supposed to do. So we find ourselves in a hard place and the rock here. So but I'm quite optimistic that with this young generation of scholars such as Mpofu, yourselves, and many other people who are concerned about this country, things will change, inshallah.
Yeah, I'd like to just basically give maybe sort of a proof of concept what Brother Sandile has been mentioning now, and it can again lead to other points. But framing the idea of active citizenry, just using my own experience in my community, and I won't mention where the community is, but the role of Muslims in this community has been phenomenal. In the 10 years that I've been here, Muslims have dominated the narrative on WhatsApp community groups, number one. We've been able to leverage that group to start many social initiatives, whether it be our community patrolling forum, whether it be the cleanup of shared spaces like parks and vacant land, from there to creating awareness via news feeds about what's happening in the community, what's happening broader within the community. As soon as something goes wrong, we are at the forefront of those who come out to assist others. We also share in the joy of others and in the sadness of others. So when there's perhaps a bereavement in the community, in one of the families, we don't just keep it to a Muslim narrative, inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un, but we'll express that in an English manner to make others feel like they're also part of our prayers, and not feel they are a part of our prayers. We are all God's creation, right? And likewise, when people are having their successes, matriculants and so forth. And I mean, that's another thing to be proud of. That's part of active citizenry, which is about how do we help these matriculants that are going to be coming through the system. They just started this week. They should not be left after next year coming into a community. There could be opportunities to give back into the community. And then like that also, Muslims have contributed to schooling in the area, patrolling in the area, setting up, infrastructural projects. Those same Muslims that have become leaders on these community forums are the ones who drive the fix a pothole, are the ones who drive, lobbying our local municipal council and so forth. So I do think, just using your paradigm, Brother Sandile, I felt I just wanted to express that, because a lot of people will be looking to us tonight to say, unpack for me, what does it mean be an active citizen. So Anwar talked about, in the student governing, yes, is it student governing board?
Schools governing body.
School governing board, and being, perhaps part of your CPF and all of that. Those are roles that we can play, but I just wanted to give a few, just to elaborate on Sandile's encouragement to get involved as Muslims, because yes, we have a role to play. Anwar, in fact, you took it out of my mouth, Sandile, imatatul adha and tariq. So removing a harmful object from the path. And then Anwar, I was thinking about us and the discussions we've had with Dr. Haley about justice and equality and all of that, how that can be, weaved into our action.
No, I'm with you. And I feel like, for example, it has to come down to the practicalities of day-to-day life, where whatever service we are rendering community really benefits the people. For example, as believers in Islam, the Prophet, peace be upon him, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he taught us that khayrun nasi anfa'um linnas. The best of people are those who are beneficial towards other people. They give other people benefit. That means you're rendering service, to your family and to your community at large. So it's literally those simple things on a day-to-day basis. I do believe that considering what our country has gone through this year with the civil disturbances that we had in particularly Durban, the KwaZulu-Natal area, and parts of Johannesburg, is that South Africa's basically democracy was tested. Our democracy was tested. Our democratic institutions were put under pressure, and basically the citizens, us as the citizens, we responded. We bolstered police services even before, for example, our armed forces, the South African National Defence Force, came out in support of the South African National Police Service. We had, communities in affected neighborhoods basically setting up, security coordination between themselves. But beyond security, also, ensuring that areas that were affected by, different forms of civil disturbances, and yet we're talking about the riots, man, that people were not left hungry, whether they were Muslim and whether they were not. One of the strengths of the South African Muslim community is that we're very, very, very good at emergency relief, right? So, speaking from the Johannesburg, the amount of, emergency supplies that were sent down to KwaZulu-Natal to benefit everyone, right, was phenomenal. It was a phenomenal response. But we can't just respond in emergency situations. It's those day-to-day things that we're doing in our neighborhoods on a daily basis to ensure that, one, our society keeps functioning. So I like what our doctor in waiting, Dr. Sandile Moloi, says, knowing who's your ward councillor, knowing the agenda or the responsibilities of your ward councillor, what applies to him or her, right? What responsibilities they're supposed to officially be carrying, then what's their actual agenda. And then after we cast our votes, Monday's votes, and whoever gets elected, irrespective, who gets elected, is about holding our candidates, whoever wins the elections, holding them responsible to the their election campaign promises, right? On a month-to-month basis. I feel that's something that we've lost as South Africans. And look, I can understand this because of the pandemic, but even before this, the idea of a town hall meeting where all stakeholders, were concerned about a community, a ward, a metropolitan area, would get together and basically discuss the issues that are affecting us and discuss what's our way forward as a community, and ensuring that basically our government representatives that we have elected, they have come into office based on our strength, right? They've been paid their salaries by our tax contributions, that they fulfill their mandate. So while we volunteer in our services to make sure that potholes are covered, that we're giving time to the local police station to assist them with patrols, if that's what usually takes place, and whatever other relief efforts we're doing within our communities, sitting on the SGB of the school, at the end of the day, government is being forced to deliver, and using basically our legal muscles when necessary. This is how I feel.
I just want to have one provocative question for Sandile. And Sandile, you would have seen when you asked the question and you opened the door to an Islamic perspective, naturally we had a lot of examples. And a lot of Muslims, this is the provocative part, a lot of Muslims suffice on this. We do relief, we get involved, we play the role of community. This is almost in exclusion to the actual formal system of democracy that is at play nationally, right, and provincially, and in our wards. And the moment a Muslim plays a role, that same Muslim who was being a good person here, helping out, that person starts to take a political stance, then unfortunately you get dragged into the stigma, one of being aligned to either one of the parties. Either you're going to be, a Dacha party member, ANC, DA, Freedom Front, Al Jama, our Red Berets and others. And then you get the stigma of that. So my question to you is, how does a Muslim who has all these good intentions, Sandile, because you opened the door and as I said, we gave you all the examples and a lot of people suffice on that. But how does one get involved in the real politics of the day and still manage, perhaps it would be unfair for me to ask you, how does he or she manage the stigma? But how can you play a role beyond just what we have said at a community level, but as a Muslim get involved, but without getting caught up in the deeper or shall I say, the politics of corruption and the politics of, corruption and stuff like that. I hope my question is clear. Do you get it? Have I made myself clear?
Yes. Thank you so much for that question. Let me just preface that question by saying, a person who's seated somewhere listening to us in the comfortable of his gated community home, where there is securities, there is everything, the roads there are no potholes, he's somewhere in exclusive area and he pays his zakat every month and he pays his tax every month and his zakat annually. And the person will ask themselves, but why should I care? Why should I participate? I don't want to be involved in anything. By me offering the monetary assistance through tax, through zakat, through lila and sadaqah, I don't need to care much, But the answer to that person who has the same perception or who has the same thing in mind, say, but this is a list that I'm doing. I don't have the much time to do that. The Prophet said also, because I'm trying by all means to also provide a religious narrative, but also to give a bit of a secular to accommodate those who are not Muslims. The Prophet said, Allah loves the actions that are small but consistent. Those actions, even if they are so small, but you have done them regularly. So one of the things that as an active citizen, for you to be active, it means something that has to be done regularly. So even small things, like Sheikh Anwar made an example to say, being in a HGB board, it also part and parcel of you giving back in the community. So to answer your question, it's a very, very challenging one, in a sense that most people that I've conversed with, most of them, they say, but I don't want to be involved in politics. I'm a Muslim, and I see the role that I've been playing in my community has now pushed me into a political space, because now I'm always involved with political parties and political representatives of various parties, either as mayors or as ward councillors. So in a sense, now I've developed the need to get into that space. So how do I protect myself from a corrupt space? Because the space itself, the space is contaminated with ill intentions of other people. So how do I make sure that I extricate myself from those intentions of those who look? For me, the answer that I can give to that person is, already Muslims have already demonstrated, and that alone, it's an indication that it's something that comes naturally in us, in those who are Muslims, because it's embedded in the teachings of the religion, which a person, if they are born Muslims from a young age, they practice that act or that habit of being active in any way, because in Islam you're encouraged through many statements of the Prophet and through many verses of the Quran to be an active participant in society. Hence, a conversation like this in a Muslim society, some of the people will deem it, oh, okay, it's one of those things, but it's something that we know and we are doing it already. So why not go and preach it to those who are not doing it? So what I can say to a person who gets into that space, or an advice to a person who finds himself in a space of being involved in politics, which is already polluted by those who are engaging in corruption, state capture, and likewise, how do you then safeguard yourself and make sure that whatever that you do is clean? It's quite a challenging one. I haven't read the book by the former MEC of transport. So once I get that book, I'm hoping that he will give us answers to that, because he was involved in the transport sector in Gauteng for some time. So, but nonetheless, what I can say is honesty. You know, the country has the constitution itself and the rules. There are so many red tapes that the government and the government institutions, such as Chapter 9 institutions, have put in place to ensure that there is clean or there's good governance. So if you as a Muslim, you play your role, or you as a person, not even a Muslim, anyone who is there, who's asking themselves, what, I've just been elected as a ward councillor, as ward councillor candidate. So how do I ensure that I do not get trapped into corruption and all those things? Simple, play by the rules. There are institutions that are there to protect you. If there's anything that maybe as a whistleblower, okay, we know this. There are dangers of that. You know, we just a few months ago, a lady was gunned down because she exposed those who were corrupt. So what I can say, it's even if you die in that act, I sincerely believe that you will die as a person who was in jihad, because you were trying to fight evil. So yeah, for me, that's what I can say.
From India, right? For example, one of my teachers, Sheikh Sharif Banna, I remember once asking him, I said, you know, the role of basically Muslim scholarship within politics, the political arena of the country. And I mean, he's quite politically active himself in his own country, you know, being a British national, right? So as an activist, as a scholar, his response to me was that the ulama, Muslims should be above politics. It doesn't mean that you're not politically astute. It doesn't mean that you're not politically involved in a way. But rather what it means is that you're not being caught up in the quagmire of politics, you know, basically the corruption and basically being a party man, right? What really comes to mind, though, is that beyond the day-to-day practical things that we are doing in the neighborhoods where we love, work, and play, what's also important is that we are very aware of national policy on all the issues that affect us, right? And the Muslim community, it's formal scholarship, the ulama, it's scholars in other fields, you know, politics, philosophy, economics, accounting, finance, whatever. Our minds need to come together and start looking at national policy and asking, is this good? Is this the best model that we have? Are these the best policies? What can we suggest to government that's better? And, you know, actually engage government on a level where, you know, we attempting to frame policy. That's part of democratic participation. You know, it's nothing sinister or untoward. You know, reviewing government policy and voicing our critiques or our praise for government policy. And also as part of active citizenship, I remember when we kicked off this podcast, we spoke out against toxic charity, you know, the constant hand down solution. And this is a language that Sandile will understand very well, because we all come from the same school here, right? And we talked about the hand up policy. But I think prototyping, so if we come out with a you know, critique of government policy, or, you know, anything, let's say a suggestion to government, we as a community basically dedicate energy, time, and resources into prototyping a model that we can show to be successful, you know, to government and you know, the broader public and the private sector, to say we are doing A, B, C, X, Y, Z to address problems 1, 2, 3, and this is the prototype that we've used, and this is the results that we've achieved. Now, government, we want you to weigh in on this. Maybe you can basically mainstream this for the rest of the country if it's a workable model. So we go beyond, just the ballot. We go beyond just fixing our potholes, and we're going beyond just, being accused of looking after our own selfish interest, or just making monetary contributions via Zakah, Lillah, and other charities. But the practical work that we're doing really benefits everyone, because we're prototyping. We're prototyping solutions to issues that everyone faces. Now, that hadith that I quoted, the best of people are those who benefit people. This idea is an inspiration from that hadith, and this the idea of removing something from a road that can be harmful to other people. These are the principles. These are our values that we cherish as believers, and we definitely can use it to fulfill our mandate of being basically beneficial to everyone that we encounter, adding value to their lives. So yeah, that's my contribution at the level of policy. Us working on government policy, critiquing it, and prototyping solutions to national and local problems.
Maybe just before we Sandile, please go for it. I have a question for you. In fact, I don't want to lose the opportunity having you on the podcast. I had a question for you, but I think you had a comment, so please go for it.
Oh, okay. No. I was saying I concur with Brother Anwar in terms on a policy level, to say we have to now play a role in the sense that because if Muslims continue to isolate themselves and really create that buffer between themselves and the community, and so okay, we are creating our own Muslim community, that even if we give others outside, but we don't care of what's happening in government, because the system is already rotten. So we do not want to even entertain the idea of a system itself. So I think it's key that we participate in every levels, even from the grassroots level, even to the top. I spoke earlier on of the vertical, to say there is this vertical relationship in active citizenship, where we are constantly holding our government accountable, but also accountability would also mean, like Sheikh Anwar said, you must also compliment wherever something is done good. Give them a hand. That's good. We support this policy, and where you think that the policy won't benefit people, offer a critique. And that's one of the things that we tend to turn a blind eye on. So yeah, I agree with you, Brother Anwar. Yes, Brother Mohammed.
No. As you guys were both speaking, I can't help but bring one memory from my youth. I always thought active citizenry in the old days was the opening up to the column in the letters to the editor, and always finding a Muslim person having written to the editor on a Sunday Times, and in your local newspapers, when you see, whether it be in those days, Anwar, we used to have, the Lenasia Times, and some of the other local, the Horizon that used to come out in Eldos back where I was. You'd always see, Muslims writing to the editor. It was always got to do with something that they may have seen wrong in society, and something addressing society. And that for me was part of what I thought active citizenry was actually when we were growing up. And I guess it also comes from an era where the non-white voice was suppressed. So, there was very limited avenues. As things, of course, started to open up, so did that role change. Sandile, I think for me, this is a personal request from me, is really getting, based on your areas of interest and the field that you're in, it's almost to frame, within the context, of course, of active citizenry. One, what would you say is our responsibilities as citizens going into this election? And then post the election, almost an analysis, just because we have you and the liberty of having you on the show. What would you say is your analysis of what's likely to be the outcome in the future, going from here, of course, into national elections in the future? If you don't mind, if you'd oblige us, and we're even willing, I think Anwar would be happy as our host for this evening to give you a couple of more minutes on the dial. I think we've got about 5 left, but a bit more based on your expertise, please.
Oh, okay. Let me just jump straight into this. Oh, okay, fine. Firstly, I think one of the things that we'll have to expect this time around, of which was quite good, there was a good turnout of the young people who registered to vote, something that we have to be happy about. You remember in 2018, there was not much voter turnout. The young people were not, there was very less young turnout of young people in voting, in terms of registration and voting. But now, at least we know the number has somehow increased, so which is good. Young people are now really interested in taking action. But also, this is going to be a very interesting election for all political parties. One, for the governing party, for me, it's again going to be a challenge on whether what happened in 2016, this thing, it will replicate itself or not. In 2016, we remember that they lost several metros, and at times were even forced to enter in coalition with other political parties. So one thing that we have to understand as well, which we can also filter into this thing, active citizenship also plays a role in terms of bringing community harmony, peace in the community. Because if now and then as community members we join hands for a common good, Allah brings that love and understanding between one another. So we are moving towards the politics of coalition, the coalition politics, where you have joint government, joint political parties governing this thing, a particular municipality. So the question is, will they do it for their own T-shirt or for the people? That's when we have to understand now who really has the interest of the people at heart. Because every political party that's vying for, that's campaigning for these in these elections, all of them, they say they proclaim to achieve one thing, that is to provide service delivery to the people, to provide services to the people. So once in power, that will be the test of whether can they work together. Because there is no way, should not discard the fact that we might find ourselves in a situation where we have a coalition government again, in particular in major metros, in Johannesburg, in Tshwane, Nelson Mandela, eThekwini. So there's quite a number of, and even Ekurhuleni, we might see those coalition governments, either between the ANC and the EFF. Some say it's unlikely to happen, or either between the ANC and all those small parties, or the EFF and all those small parties, or even the DA. But I'm not sure whether the DA and the EFF partnership will be revived following the embarrassment of 2016 with the removal of Herman Mashaba in Johannesburg and the removal of Mosimango in this thing in Tshwane, as well as in the removal of this thing in Nelson Mandela. So it's going to be quite interesting this time around. But post that, what we can expect, it's the preparation for what we'll see. The outcomes of these elections are more likely to tell us what will be the outcomes in 2024. Who will be the government in 2024? Will we have a government in waiting in the form of the ANC, of the EFF or the DA, or will have the ANC still enjoying that dominance, or if they are, which is most likely, of course, that their votes will go down. There's been projections from several analysts and this thing, scholars have done their research on this, but we hope, inshallah, for more of a peaceful elections. We know our election, particularly in KZN, it's always is that violence and all of that. So we pray, inshallah, that Allah grants us peaceful elections, because one of the most important things in democracy, it's fair elections, and also fair elections also include free and fair elections also include a peaceful election where we don't have any people losing their lives because of election. Yeah, so yeah, that's what I can say.
Shukran so much. If you just will indulge me with one last thing, active citizenship, with considering our topic, considering where our country is, the need for us to play a role. What about, let's say, young people and their social media using our, we constantly see this here, where you have, as part of toxic charity, you have basically poverty porn, where we have to display on our social media how we are helping other people. It's good to advertise, to encourage other people to do, to get involved. But when we do so in a way that strips basically the people that we are trying to assist, when it strips them of their dignity and their honor, then that's unacceptable. But in the realm of active citizenship, how do you guys see us using social media to galvanize our communities to basically move forward and move government forward? Because ultimately, South Africans, we're in one boat, and if this boat sinks, we all drown with it. So we have to use the tools of the trade, the tools of the time, basically to move our country forward. What would you be your guys' social media tips for active citizenry?
I'll go quickly. Sandile can end us off. I think for me, one thing South Africans like to complain, and the youth are no different that I've seen. I apologize. Let me rather reframe that. South Africans like to complain, and I see it across the band, whether it's old or young. South Africans like and enjoy laughing at themselves at the same time. We laugh about things. We laugh about the lights being off. They can take away our electricity, but they can't take away our bride. And another thing is that South Africans, I do find that there's a strong current within the youth of voicing their opinions without fear of condemnation. But whether that can be escalated to action and really lobbying change, that's yet to be seen, because a lot I've been told you can only do that via the ballot box. And Sandile mentioned that we'll see a lot of greater, more inclusive youth participation in these elections going forward. But I do think that it needs to be tempered with a strong undercurrent of civil strife that does come with it. South Africans like to fight with each other, and that's clear on Twitter. It's clear on other social media. I was checking the comments on a YouTube video last night of ENCA, where they were talking about that the rate of Indians migrating and applying for migration in KZN has increased to leave the country, right? To immigrate and to leave the country. And a lot of the people were saying there in the comments from the majority demographic in the country, saying that in fact, as much as we applaud these people for them wanting to do that, there's also a problem of a lot of us just fighting with each other and we get nowhere, right? So there's no change because we're just fighting one against the other. So I do think responsible use is responsible utilization, but one that's hopefully going to try and deliver some change. That of course is yet to be seen. I don't have that answer. Sandile?
Oh, thank you so much. For me, it's quite a tough one, precisely because I've really not paid much attention to social media. But given that the social media, it's a space where young people in majority, where they converge and have their own conversation, it's a platform that it's used by many people. One way of somehow encouraging people to participate in their communities, it's by putting it the way it is. We like you've used the analogy of the ship to say, if that boat sinks, all of us will die. We'll drown, all of us. So it's about time now that we pick up, we actually urge one another to participate, and you can just use words of encouragement and all of that. And also in closing, in my case, and I'm saying this with utmost respect, and I would not even mention this thing to promote a person or anything, but in my case, from undergraduate level, there's someone in a particular organization that have played a tremendous role to enable me to get where I am. So, and without even putting me in the posters and say, hey, here's the face of our, there's our beneficiary and all of that. So I concur with Brother Anwar. It's something that we have to constantly do, but also because there's also a responsibility and accountability in the sense, it's also something that we have to take into cognizance that some of them, they feel compelled to do that. But nonetheless, I think the most important thing in closing, Brother Anwar, in terms of encouraging young people to participate in this thing in their communities, or even not young people, everyone, It's about telling them the reality that, guys, we are in this together. Like Brother Mohammed said, there's so much hatred that South Africans have for one another. We are constantly fighting. We are constantly calling each other names and all of that. We're doing the work of what this thing colonialism actually was for. You know, divide and conquer. You know, you divide people and you conquer. So if we do not do away with those barriers that they've been constructed to divide us, we will, unfortunately, all of us will lose, because those who are rich, they will be victims of this thing, of crime, and those who are poor, they'll be victims of poverty, because there'll be no jobs. If there's people that disinvest, there'll be no jobs, and there'll be, you know. So we have to understand that we are in this together, and we have to work together. And the only thing that can bring us together, it's one thing: let's share a common interest, and that interest is one. All of us, we want a peaceful country, and all of us, we want a country where our children and and everyone else can have equal opportunities, regardless of race, religion, or creed. So I think if we tell it as it is, that, guys, there's no one to save us. Let's stop waiting for a savior. There's no savior but us. So yeah, that's all I can say. Thank you so much.
Shukran. That was beautiful. Jazakallah khairan. Thank you for joining us tonight, Sandile. We wish you well for your PhD. I know you're working very, very hard on that. Obviously, your research interests are definitely very, very valuable. Your insights are also highly valuable as well. And we look forward to your future contributions, and hopefully also maybe hosting you again on our podcast sometime in the future. But we wish you best, all the best for the future. Shukran jazilan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.